Hello there, this is Matthew of Luminous Beings Books, and I am coming at you with another edition of Stray Thoughts. This is actually coming on the heels of a failed Stray Thoughts that I tried to do, and it was actually the other day, and I totally bombed, and had to stop a couple minutes in, and I was going to pick that one back up, but I decided not to. Also, for the record, today is April 3rd, which is a Tuesday. Anyway, and if I'm remembering right, there's a contradictory ethic about Tuesday. One is in Spanish, or from the Mexican culture. Well, perhaps the Spaniard, I don't know. I think it's fair to say from the Mexican culture at this point. And the other is from the Torah or the Hebrew, I guess the Jewish culture. And at least it's an old saying. And one is, Tuesday is called martes in the Spanish language. And there's a saying, no embarques ni casarses or casartes en martes, which means, I think that's the right way. What I just said was, even if it was poorly said, was don't embark on a journey, possibly just take a ship. I'm not sure if embark is like a ship or just anything, or marry on a Tuesday. And I'm not sure where that came from, but Tuesday is like a bad day to do things. And the other is it's from the Bible. On Tuesday, which is the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's the third day in Genesis of the, every day it says, this happened, and God said, let there be light, and he saw the light and saw that it was good, etc., etc. Apparently on Tuesday, the third day, anyway, because in Judaism, the months are named and the days are not. It's the first day, the first day through the sixth day, and then there's the day of preparation, or the fifth day. First through fifth, then the day of preparation is the sixth day, although I'm sure it's called the sixth day as well, especially like in secular Israel right now, or whatever. Israel's not a religious state, it's a secular state that happens to have religious people in it. And then the seventh day is the Shabbat, and Shabbat means rest, but it also has it has like a root for the word seven. So like seven or it doesn't mean rest. Seven and oath and something else are all linked with each other, but it's the day of rest. Anyway, I'm getting on a whole big tangent, which is to say that if I'm remembering correctly, and it is in fact the third day, that it says that, God said it was good twice on that day. It's funny that from Hebrew, from the Bible, there is a connotation that the third day of the week, Tuesday, is a good day to do things, and it's seen as an auspicious day in Judaism now for people to do things, and that in from the Mexican culture you have them saying that Tuesday is a bad thing to do things. So I just think that's kind of funny. But all of this is to say that I was thinking about The Axis earlier, which The Axis is a working title, or it's really like a production title, codename, kind of like Space Bear or Blue Harvest, which I think was subtitled Horror Beyond Imagination. And anyway, Blue Harvest and Space Bear, you can look those up and see what those are the secret names of, what those represent. Anyway, but so The Axis, and I've got a couple of these, but The Axis is my code name for the story that I have, that I've had in my head for a long time, about a young boy. Actually, here's the pitch, because I'm not sure I've shared the pitch on Luminous Beings yet, and this is actually an idea for a novel, but here we go. A disaffected youth must gather together, recoalesce, whatever, the pieces of the shards of his shattered psyche in order to wake up or be lost in unending dream. So I like really internal things that get into people's heads, and I decided to make a story that happens entirely in someone's head. And by the way, this is huge spoilers for the book. I don't know by the time I finished the novel and have it published how many people who are reading it, or how many people read it. One, I don't know if anyone's going to read it. Two, I don't know if anyone who's going to read it will have heard the spoilers that I'm about to share. 3, I don't believe in spoilers actually ruining something. 4, there have been studies that I will not cite right now because I do not have the citation in front of me or at easy access because I'm driving, that say that when something has been spoiled for a person or when they've been through it already, a movie, a book, whatever, they enjoy it more the second time because they can anticipate, they watch it in a different way, and it's more like maybe hanging with an old friend or doing an old dance or eating an old comfortable meal, eating like comfort food, something that you're familiar with, and that familiarity brings joy. It's like, being, well, never, that's not a good example. Anyway, so I don't believe in spoilers, so I'm basically going to spoil the heck out of this story. So here we go. Basically what that means I almost said the real working title that I may change. The Axis. The Axis is the name of a Jimi Hendrix song, which I first heard on as a cover by one John Mayer when he was going from, I don't know how to describe it, but when it was his blues album called Try. Anyway, great song. It starts off, anger, he stands towering in shining metallic purple armor, queen jealousy, envy, wait. Anyway, so it starts off naming all these emotions and giving them a color and giving them a vague description. And you have purple, which is this angry, armored fellow, and then you have envy, which is this sneering woman in green, and so on and so forth. And basically 6 or 7 emotions are named and given colors in this song called The Axis. And Hendrix says in the song, there's a refrain, just ask the Axis, he knows everything, etc., etc. And he's describing the colors as these emotions that are him, but that are, pinned to him and disable him from, like loving this woman or declaring his love to her, kind of because his emotions are all warring. And I thought, I love getting into the idea of emotions. And by the way, The Axis, when I first saw, I think I've only seen it the one time, but it was really good. When I first saw Inside Out, I thought, no, someone has already done The Axis in a really neat way, and it was Pixar, and people cried, and there was a little girl, and yada yada. But you know what? I recently, I don't remember where I heard this sentiment expressed, but even if you, and I do mean you, even if you do have a story in you that has been done by somebody else and done by somebody who's very much more competent than you are, you have a unique voice and you will say it differently. And there's nothing new under the sun. There are, some people say 3, some people say 21. I think 21 is a number that's been thrown out there. Basic types of stories. And everything else is just a permutation of those basic 21 or 3 fundamental roots of what a story can be, with a beginning, middle, end, and a conflict, and a protagonist or hero, and a villain. Or, whether the villain is another person, a force of nature, or the individual themselves. And actually, I mentioned that one last for emphasis. I love the individual as the enemy of the self. I abandoned writing a piece on luminousbeings.blog, kind of doing some armchair psychoanalysis of myself. And I talked about the shadow self, which is a concept from Jungian Jungian psychology. I am not a machine, I swear. And anyway, I had at one point basically let myself feel sorry for myself and blamed it all on my shadow self, who I didn't know about the shadow self at the time, but I knew about the subconscious, and those things are related. And basically I decided that my shadow self hated me and wanted to ruin my life, and it kind of allowed me to feel sorry for myself, and I'm definitely over that. I recognize that that's wrong, and I think even at almost, 30 and a half, almost at 31, I'm still coming to terms with what it means to reject that and to really take ownership of everything in my life for myself. But I'm about to pause this recording real quick, and I'll pick up later with what the Axis is going to be, enemy of myself, etc. Okay, and I am back. I've got some matzo pizza. I'm going to wait till it's cooler, so you might hear it sliding around a little bit. And anyway, so getting back to the enemy of myself, or the internal enemy, I don't know if it's specifically because I had that issue, or because I like the idea of facing the mirror, like, well, honestly, I only acknowledge after the fact that in Empire Strikes Back, Luke is really facing himself, and that's part of his trial to become a Jedi, or whatever, given to him by the Force. Which, by the current Star Wars understanding of how the Force works and what it does and all that, it's a little murky, but just to talk about it how it originally seemed makes a lot more sense. And where I picked up on this was actually in the special features and documentary, or commentary, I should say, from Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars micro series that he was commissioned to do. Not him alone, but he was like the lead man on it, the head of the project by Lucasfilm. And anyway, in season 2, there's a plot where Anakin, basically, they're going to dub him Jedi Knight. They dub him a Jedi Knight, and then they let him go have his third trial at some point, right before Revenge of the Sith. And in it, he deals with these mechanized people who are becoming monsters because of the machinery that has overtaken their bodies and the power that it puts into them and whatever. So it's like a mirror of what he'll be as Vader eventually. Oops, I just spoiled it. And anyway, it's interesting, and it reflects. It's interesting. Well, it's very interesting. But so I really do like the concept, and they say that one of the trials is facing the mirror. There's the trial of the flesh, the trial of something else, and then facing the mirror. And a little pig man says that in the show, Even Peel, I believe. Anyway, so I'm really fixated on that. Another something that really interests me is, and this is turning into a shadow font, but I'm going to keep it as a Stray Thoughts because it's just that all over the place. The Wizard of Oz. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy faces a reflection of her own world, and she's in a dream in the movie. In the books, it's real, which is cool, and it almost makes things more interesting to have these completely separate universes, and they're both so neat. Anyway, in the movie, Dorothy wakes up, and it was all a dream all along, basically. And in the fantasy of the dream, she learns a lesson, and only when she learns that lesson that there's no place like home, which, agree with it or not, that was her. That's what the creators of that wanted the message to be. It enables her to wake up. There's another movie made by the Jim Henson folks. It's called Mirror Mask. Basically has the same premise. I think even to an extent, Chihiro's struggle in Spirited Away reflects this, like, coming to grips with a key truth about oneself is what enables, what empowers somebody. And like I said about myself, that I've only recently really begun to like focus and work hard on myself and say about pretty much everything in my life, I take ownership over this, and if I fail or if I succeed, it's because of my efforts. Not that there's not other influences, not that I'm, abandoning God in the way I think about how I do things, because that's not true. But I need to put in the effort if I want to make something happen. And if I mess something up, it's because of my own failings. And basically, the Axis casts a disaffected, angry, sullen teenage boy in a story where he does something wrong, and he basically wants to blame it on others, even though he was the one who actually initiated the action. But he wants to place the, I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for those people who did this to me. In it, he gets injured or something happens. There's a trigger event, and he ends up falling asleep. And while he's asleep, he, like Dorothy, he's gone through such a traumatic experience that gets him hospitalized and unconscious and whatever, possibly in a coma, that in order to cope and to not deal with it really, his unconscious mind like breaks apart his conscious mind sort of, and it kind of does like a multiple personalities type thing where his different emotions are all pinned to individuals in his life, in his school specifically. And he basically is this like kind of husk or like kind of just being, he's kind of willless, aimless, shiftless, and he's able to just be pulled along in any direction. And because he basically stops being himself, he retains like memory and most of his identity, but there's just nothing there. There's no desire to do anything really. And I thought it would be interesting to have a character who is like this, is willless, is driveless, has this nothing going on, but who, when they interact with other people around them, kind of shares in their will. So there will be a character who's basically angry and represents anger, jealousy, etc. Understanding is one of them. So that's it's negative and positive emotions, and it's basically going to be a journey through a world or through worlds that he will awaken when he recognizes that all these different people are all parts of him, and they're all one basically, and that the selfish, like nihilistic, or not even nihilistic, just like completely, so utter, like there's a part of himself, and this foe is his own subconscious, I'm saying, and like kind of like anyway, getting deeper into Jungian psychology, I don't want to do that right now, but he's basically battling himself, and his unconscious mind or his shadow or whatever kind of wants to supplant him, wants him to stay asleep and for it to be awakened. Maybe, but that doesn't really make sense, because at the same time I want his unconscious self to be like so lazy and so, forgive me, like animalistic, that it wants nothing to do with the world, and it basically just wants to eat, sleep, be left alone, and like he has to rise above. This is Micah. This is the character, the main character of Axis. Anyway, Micah basically like has to rise above that and come to grips. Oh, there's another Jewish teaching is this, and this is kind of the theme for the book, which is the world was created for, that one should think of themselves that the world was created for their existence. The whole world, the whole universe, everything was created so that I can be alive. And because of that, because of the tremendous lengths that have been gone through for me to be alive in this world, I need to make all that work worthwhile by being a good person, by being good to my community, by being good to others, neighbors, strangers, whatever, by being a good person and justifying all of this around us with my existence. And like Micah's like almost, that animalistic part of himself is himself, and it's this desire to just fall asleep forever, to basically die and to give up on everything. And he has to overcome that, and in feeling all his feelings by working with the different emotions, he not only reveals that they're like, I don't know, like I kind of want there to be like I want there to be a lot going on in this book. I don't want it to be a particularly long book. I don't like books that take forever. And my goal is to make this like a young adult novel. YA all the way, as they say. I don't know anybody who says that, but whatever. But I basically want like there to be a lot of layers and a lot of levels and a lot of paralleling and stuff. So like you've got, three people who represent these, negative traits, and three people who represent these positive traits, and then there's like him and a female character in the middle. And I kind of even want to go so far as to make it so like the female character is like also like the two of them together are almost more co-protagonists, and they really represent himself. And wow, yeah, and that's not because of anything. I'm not trying to make any social commentary with that, other than like men have femininity in them and women have masculinity in them, and like you shouldn't be afraid of that fact, and you should kind of embrace it. And I think that embracing it, you'll be a happier person. Anyway, I'm back at work. I gotta stop now. But I guess talking out loud and sharing my idea for how I want the Axis to go, it has actually kind of given me an epiphany on where I want to go, and I think I definitely want to focus on paralleling and layering. I actually started this in mind with trying to figure out how I'm gonna develop it to have like multiple worlds or levels of the world that Micah travels through with his companions, but I'm not even sure that's necessary. Or maybe it is, and maybe that'll be the perfect vehicle. In each world they can experience different things, and one will parallel the last. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. You can also subscribe, and when you do, you can ring that notification bell to get a notice every time one of these comes out. If you're on a phone, it'll be a little notification that'll pop up, or an email. You can even get the email. I mean, on your desktop is fine if you're logged in, and you can even get notifications on your desktop if you are enjoying these from there. So anyway, thank you for your time.